In the living room, Matt noticed the sudden change in Candace and raised a brow. Are you okay? Why do you suddenly seem uncomfortable? He asked, touching her shoulder slightly. I think I should probably leave now that your friends are here, Candace said, wanting to stand up, but Matt pulled her down. Why? What is the problem? We were having a good time a moment again, and now you just want to leave, he asked in confusion. Candace looked away from him in embarrassment. Your best friend and his fiancée, they know me, Candace confessed without meeting his gaze. Know you? Like from the club where you work? He asked, looking at her with interest, and she nodded her head. They were at the club 2 nights ago, and I attended to them, she said, still looking very embarrassed. So Brian and Sonia knew who she was? That explained the few seconds of awkward silence when they just came in. He was curious to hear what Brian would have to say once he got the chance, but for now, he was more concerned about the lady in front of him. So what? He asked, making her raise her head to look at him in surprise. You are not embarrassed? She asked in confusion, and the corners of his lips curved in a knowing smile. Why should I be? From what I can see here, you are the only one who is embarrassed, and I wonder why. He had particularly picked interest in Candace because she had stated on her profile that she was a stripper. He had been curious to meet the lady who had been bold enough to tell others that she stripped for a living, and that was why her sudden embarrassment seemed strange to him. It is one thing for you to know what I do, but it is another thing for your friends to know. I assume you brought me here because you like me. I don't want to be an embarrassment. Look, I told you this before, but I'm going to tell you again. I'm someone that likes to think that every legal job is honorable. You were proud of your job enough to add it to your profile on the dating app, so why are we having this discussion? Matt asked, and Candace relaxed a bit. Besides, they patronized you, so they can't judge you. Relax, Brian is not like that, Matt assured her. I just don't want you to be an embarrassment to you or anyone else. That people can be hypocritical, she said with a little frown, and Matt gave her a reassuring smile. It's not a big deal. I only feel jealous that Brian got to see your body before I did, Matt said with a pout, which made the dimples on Candace's face wink. Can you do me a favor, though? Matt asked, his eyes glinting with mischief. What favor? Let's act like I don't know anything, okay? Matt asked, making her brows pull together in confusion. Why? Let's just say I want to mess around with Brian and see what he's going to do. So let's act like you didn't tell me anything, Matt said, and Candace gave him a nod. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Sonia stood by the door glaring at Brian. Leave them alone. I was just going to meet them. Come on. You don't expect me to go out there while they are together and tell Matt that his girlfriend is a stripper, do you? Brian asked incredulously. Sonia looked at him doubtfully. So where were you going to then? She asked, narrowing her eyes at him suspiciously. I just want to get a glass of water. I'm thirsty, Brian said, waiting for her to get out of his way. I will get you the glass of water myself. Don't step out of the room. I still don't trust you, Sonia said with a shake of her head, making Brian want to scoff him. See who was talking about trust? Who said he trusted her either? Brian returned to the bed and sat down. You can go and get the water. I'm waiting. Good boy, Sonia said with a smile as she removed the single key from the door's keyhole before stepping out of the bedroom, making sure to lock Brian inside as she left. Brian looked at the door in disbelief and shook his head. What a crazy woman. She really locked him in his bedroom? In his own house? He couldn't believe he was in this situation. He just couldn't believe that of all the sane people in that hotel's lobby that night, he had the misfortune of choosing the one lady that behaved as she had recently escaped from an asylum. God help him. Once Sonia fetched his glass of water, she returned to the bedroom and locked the door using the key. Here is your glass of water, she announced as she approached the bed and handed it to him with a bright smile on her face. Brian watched in disbelief as she dipped the key into her jacket like she was safe keeping it where he wouldn't touch. Can I ask you a question? Brian asked after taking a sip from the water while she bent down to take off her sneakers. Sonia straightened up before answering him. Sure. Sonia said as she walked to the front of the bedroom mirror and pulled her hair back into a messy bun. No offense, but are you mentally stable? She glanced at him over her shoulder and tried not to laugh out loud at his funny question. Most times she asked herself if she was mentally stable too. I don't think I am. Why? Want to take me to a psychiatrist? She asked with a mocking smile as she turned in his direction and took off her jean jacket, leaving only her crop top. She paused long enough to drop the jacket on the table next to her and then slowly took off her trousers while waiting for him to answer her question. Brian watched as she took off her clothes and he felt something stir within him. He had seen her in a semi naked state the previous day when she had been dressed in just the red bikini, but that hadn't prepared him for this. Seeing her now, dressed in just her olive green crop top and a black lace pant, he felt his mouth go dry. He could tell she wasn't wearing a bra under the crop top because of the outline of her boobs. She had the face of a mischievous angel, but the body of a temptress. Her body looked so smooth and taut that he had to ball his hands in a fist to keep himself from wanting to touch her. His eyes moved from the swell of her boobs down to her taut abdomen, and he noticed for the first time that she had a piercing on her belly button. So sexy. He wondered why she had bothered to wear the jacket all day, instead of flaunting her sexy abdomen to the world. His eyes continued their journey from her tiny waist, down to her slim hip, and then down to her long legs, which seemed to have no end. He didn't like this woman, and seeing how his body reacted to her, he knew she was going to be a problem. Sonia cleared her throat to get his attention. "You are doing that staring thing again," she said in an amused tone, and when Brian met her mocking gaze, he could swear that she had stripped in front of him intentionally to get a reaction. "You can't put on a show and expect me not to watch," he said in a lazy tone, deciding he wasn't going to feel embarrassed about being caught staring. She could easily have undressed in the bathroom, but had chosen to do that in front of him. He wasn't gentlemanly enough to look away from a body like hers. "No, sir." "Fair enough," Sonia said with a satisfied smile. She was going to keep revealing her body to him little by little and make him lust over her. Lust was a good enough start for her. She walked over to the drawers in the closet and took out her nightwears, which consisted of a matching set of a sexy silk bralette crop top and silk boxer shorts with lace trims. "I'll use the bathroom first," she informed him, before walking into the bathroom with her phone and the nightwears. Once inside the bathroom, she hung the nightwears by the towel railing before turning on the shower to let it run so that Brian wouldn't hear anything. After that, she dialed Lucy's line. "Hey, love. I'm home now," she said apologetically as she sat down to ease herself, after dropping the Lucy who had been busy reading a novel stretched out on the bed. "Yeah? So how was your date?" she asked, wanting to talk about Sonia for a change since their conversations always seemed to be all about her. "Not bad at all. Went really well for a first date," Sonia said with a happy smile. "You bullied him into taking you out on the date, didn't you?" Lucy asked suspiciously. Sonia giggled. "He actually bullied me into going out on a date with him. He seized my laptop and writing materials," Sonia said with a smug smile. "He did? How come? What happened? Don't tell me he is into you now?" Lucy asked in surprise, although she wouldn't doubt it since Sonia always had her way with guys. "Well, he is gradually working his way there. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Enough about me. Tell me about you," Sonia said, reminding Lucy about their conversation. "Well, I've come up with a plan to solve all my problems. I'm starting by hanging out with Anita tomorrow," Lucy said and explained who Anita was. You are sure you want to do that?" Sonia asked uncertainly, remembering what the old lady had said earlier. "Yes, he likes her after all, so I'm just doing us all a favor. I need your help, though. Have you been able to find out anything about my boss?" Lucy asked hopefully. "Just that he is very good-looking, and he is an introvert who prefers to be alone," Sonia said, and lowered her voice again. "While we were at the restaurant, he called Brian and was talking to him about you." Lucy's heart skipped a beat, and she sat up. "About me? Really? What did he say?" she asked curiously. "I am yet to get the details from Brian. I didn't want it to look too suspicious that I am showing so much interest in his brother," Sonia explained. "But can you help me find out more? You can tell Brian about my relationship with his brother. I don't mind. I would like to get close to him, Lucy said, making Sonia raise a brow. You don't mind? Why the sudden change of heart? I thought I was the mentally unstable one between us both. Why are you competing with me? Sonia asked in an amused tone. I figured if I become close to him, I might be able to convince him to transfer Tom to a different unit without having to lose my job, Lucy explained, and Sonia rolled her eyes at the logic. Are you sure you want me to do that? Sonia asked curiously. She really didn't mind doing it, though, since that meant Lucy would be interacting with two guys, Tom and Thomas Hank. She almost giggled when it occurred to her that both guys were actually bearing the same name. Tom? Or was Tom's name Thompson? Sonia wondered. Yes, he is making me very uncomfortable, and I just don't want to have to see him everywhere all the time, Lucy explained. All right, then. I will see what I can do and get back to you tomorrow. Sonia promised as she raised her other hand to scratch the back of her head where she felt a itch. She heard a clinking sound but thought nothing of it as she stood up and flushed the toilet. What's that sound I'm hearing in the background? Lucy asked, referring to the sound of the running water. It's the shower. He is in the bedroom, so I'm in the bathroom, Sonia explained, making Lucy sigh. Let's talk tomorrow then. I love you. Good night. I love you more, Pumpkin. Good night, Sonia said as she hung up and dropped her phone by the basin sink. She started taking off her crop top and paused midway when she remembered the key. The key! Her heart skipped a beat and her eyes flew to the toilet when she remembered the clinking sound she had heard a moment ago. She shook her head in denial when it clicked in her head that the sound she had heard was that of the key falling into the toilet when she raised her arm. No! Oh, God! What could she do now? Brian had to have a spare key, right? Yes, he definitely did have a spare key. There was nothing to worry about. It was an accident after all. It wasn't like she had deliberately decided to flush the key down the toilet. Bearing these thoughts in mind, Sonia proceeded to shower, and once she was done, she changed into her sexy nightwear before joining Brian in the bedroom. Brian raised his gaze from his phone and looked at her when she walked in. There was no denying that this crazy green-eyed witch was sexy as fuck. Keeping his hands to himself for the next couple of months would be a major issue. His brows shot up when he noticed that she didn't have the usual mischievous glint in her eyes as she stopped at the edge of the bed. She almost looked like something was wrong. What could be wrong? He wondered as he looked at her. Is there a problem? He asked a second later when she remained standing by the edge of the bed like a kid who had done something wrong and was awaiting punishment. Sonia flashed him a smile that was somewhere between nervous and apologetic, and that set off his internal alarm system, making him sit up on the bed. What did you do? He asked, knowing she had done something wrong. It's not like it was deliberate. Before she could finish, he stood up and headed for the bathroom to see if she had destroyed something. Sonia ran after him. Actually, I wanted to ask you something, she said from behind him as his eyes roamed around the bathroom. When Brian didn't find anything out of place, he turned to look at her. Go on. The bedroom door. You have a spare key, right? Sonia asked with an awkward smile. Spare key? Why was she asking? Did she? No, she couldn't lose it. There was no way. I don't. Why? You want to seize it too? Sonia bit her lower lip nervously. It kind of fell into the toilet, she said in a barely audible voice, and Brian had to strain his ears to hear her. Kind of fell into the toilet? Kind of? What did that even mean? Huh? What did you say? Brian asked, hoping he was mistaken and hadn't heard what she said correctly. Sonia took a step back and swallowed hard as she tried to summon the courage to repeat what she had just said. I said the key. Yes? What about it? Brian cut in quickly. Well, the thing is, it fell into the toilet while I was easing myself and I flushed it without knowing, Sonia said, counting her words very slowly so she wouldn't stutter. She had never seen him angry before now, so she didn't know how he was going to react. Brian took one look at how humble she looked and decided that it was best she remained that way for a while. He doubted that the key had been flushed since it was a metal. If at all it had fallen into the toilet, it would still be inside. And even if it has been flushed, he had a spare key in his drawer and two others in his study. Not that he had any intention of telling her that. Brian sighed deeply as he returned to the bed without saying a word to her, making Sonia hurry after him. You have a spare key, right? I don't, Brian said flatly and turned to his side so she wouldn't see the smirk on his face. You don't? What are we going to do then? Sonia asked with a worried frown. What do you mean, we? You locked the door. You lost the key. Not we. So I suggest you figure out a way to get us out of here, Brian said without turning to look at her, but he had a silly grin on his face. You are sure you don't have a spare key? She asked once more time as she started trying to come up with ideas on what to do. I don't, Brian snapped at her, hoping that would scare her and make her even more humble. You are the only person I know who doesn't have a spare key. How can a person be so careless? Sonia muttered under her breath as she walked away from him, making Brian turn to look at her in disbelief. She still had the nerves to talk back after what she had done? To think she was actually calling him careless when she was the person who had just flushed the key in the toilet. Crazy witch. Brian mused with a snort as he stood up. He picked up his phone and walked past Sonia, who was sitting by the dressing table, looking around the room like she was searching for something. Once inside the bathroom, he shut the door and turned on the shower before bending down beside the toilet. He didn't see any sign or shadow inside to show that the key had sunk there, so he decided to check the floor. Reason being that he wasn't sure she had seen the key fall into the toilet. If she had, she wouldn't have flushed. So that meant it was possible she had misplaced it in the bathroom, but assumed it had fallen into the toilet. He didn't have to look around much before he saw the single key on the floor beside the toilet. He chuckled to himself as he picked it up. And she had called him careless? He asked himself with a snort as he dropped the key by the basin sink and undressed so he could shower. Midway through his shower, he heard a loud bang and turned off the shower so he could figure out where the sound was coming from. Fuck! He cussed when he heard the sound a second time, and it occurred to him that Sonia was hitting something, probably the door. He quickly turned off the shower, and just as he tried to reach for his robe, which was hanging by the towel rail, he slipped, and his ankle twisted as he fell to the ground. He groaned in pain when the ankle of his right leg connected with the edge of the wall. Brian hissed painfully as he tried to stand up, grateful that he hadn't hit his head on the floor. He knew very well how easy it was for people to slip and crack their heads while bathing. He winced when he tried to stand erect, and his right foot hurt as he tried to stand on it. He ignored the pain as he reached for his robe and limped out of the bathroom. What do you think you were doing? He growled angrily. The corners of his eyes red when he saw Sonia raise something above her head to hit the door one more time. Trying to open the door, she said in a tone that suggested that his question was ridiculous. But once she turned to look at him and saw how red his eyes were and how his face was twisted in pain as he took a step forward, she assumed he was mad at her for losing the key. Don't worry, I will try to be quick, she said, raising it again. Brian's eyes flashed angrily. Stop! Brian snapped, startling her. His leg was hurting him, and it was all her fault. If only she wasn't so stubborn and annoying. Just stop! He hissed angrily and threw the key at her, his face red and veins standing out on his temple. He had planned on holding on to the key and making her worry at least until morning. Who knew the crazy green-eyed witch was going to look for something to break down his door? The key? Where did you find it? She asked happily, as she quickly picked it up without taking note of the painful expression on his face. She pursed her lips as she looked at the door which she had dented. Brian drew in a shaky breath before limping towards the bed. When she heard him groan, she hurried to his side to look at him. Did you hurt yourself? She asked with a concerned frown when she noticed how he favored one leg as he fell on the bed. The frown deeper when she noticed the veins on his temple and how red his eyes were. Just leave me alone! Please! He snapped at her, pushing off the hand she had come to place on his leg. Sonia withdrew her hand but didn't leave. Instead, she kept staring at him and waiting for him to tell her what was wrong. When he didn't say anything but pulled his right knee towards himself to touch his ankle, she realized it was his ankle, so she brushed his hand away so she could take a look. Can you just leave me alone? Brian asked between gritted teeth and sucked in a breath when she touched a painful spot. No, I won't. If you are hurt, I should help you, Sonia said as she kept looking at his ankle, which seemed like he had dislocated it. I think you sprained your ankle. What happened? Did you slip in the bathroom? She asked with a concerned frown. Hold on. I will get an ice pack so we can stop it from swelling, Sonia said as she quickly stood up and unlocked the door. Brian hissed angrily as he waited for her to get back while wondering where Matt had gone to, and why he hadn't come over to find out why Sonia had been trying to break down his door. What sort of crazy lady was she? Brian wondered, feeling sorry for himself and the bad luck that had made him propose to someone like her.